Hi, this is Steve Lentini, and I'm your host for Different Thinking for Different Times. And this is Season 1, Episode 10. So, I want to talk about the basis for this podcast briefly. On November 13th, 2002, I was doing a seminar. 1 second I was fine. I never had any symptoms. And the next second, I needed an ambulance. And 5 days later, I flatlined and gratefully was on the other side, one with everything and nothing. And I want to share that experience with everyone in the world gradually. Maybe it'll someday get to all 7 billion people that we're one with everything and nothing. And when we are out of our body, we have consciousness. I had consciousness. And there was no mention of sin in my life review, only the good I had done, only the lives I had touched. And you know how you feel when you do good, you feel good. That feeling is somehow etched into the fabric of time. And so that life review, only the lives I had touched, the good I had done, and then I was asked a question, stay or go. And my consciousness responded with, thy will be done. It didn't matter whether I stayed there or came back. And I have to tell you, there was no past or future. And I had spent most of my 50 years, I was 50 the month before. I had spent most of my life either in the past or in the future, not fully present. Yes, there were fully present moments, but not as much as there are today. Because the only thing there was on the other side was the present moment, no past and no future. Being one with God and the infinite, the life force, the goddess, the divine, it doesn't matter what you call it. The Christ-like consciousness, the Buddha, it doesn't matter what you call it. Abraham or Muhammad, again, a lot of people will probably be upset, but it doesn't have a name. It's like Lao Tzu said when someone asked him, what's the name of this life force that you're describing? And he said, how can you name that which has no name? You cannot name that which has no name. And I was one with that. And there was no mention of any sin. That's human consciousness, right? The acorn brain, as I call it, if you've listened to prior episodes, if you're listening for the first time, when we leave our body, we take nothing from here with us. We take none of our judgmental, small-minded thinking, I call it the acorn brain. Nothing from here was there. There was no male, no female, no races, no religions, nothing from what I call the pea brain, the acorn brain, small-minded thinking was there. And that's my message for today, is to talk about intolerance. I put a post on Facebook about intolerance, and a few people responded. Interestingly, without tolerance, they had an argument to what I was saying, and I said, well, thank you for your opinion. Or I said, I gave them a definition of what I had experienced. And when I mean intolerance, comparing intolerance of anything to intolerance of either someone's sex or their preference for a life partner, their race, any preference, that life journey that people choose. How about their politics, right? I think that's what I had mentioned, that any intolerance is the same as an intolerance of someone's sexual preference or their race or their nationality. To have intolerance is not what we come from. So the pure consciousness I was in mentioned nothing of my sexual preference, my race, my political leanings. There was none of that mentioned, and nothing from here, nothing from the way we think was there. It's amazing. It's beyond, we call it infinite. It's way beyond that. And you will experience that yourself someday. Why I got a second chance at life, I don't know. Perhaps to tell the story and to share the advancement of thinking compared to some of the writings that are thousands of years old, that were filled with anger and vengeful, violent, war-filled God, along with a loving God. And those two exist here, of course, right? Because opposites exist on Earth. And while I believe those writings were all divinely inspired, you can see where the human came out, where all of a sudden the human's anger or resentment or wish for revenge, wish for one side beating the other side, you could see where they came out in the stories. And I believe that was the human influence, the ego brain, the small-minded thinking. Now, I'm not saying that people like Hitler or Mussolini or any one side that tried to impose their will on the other should be tolerated. No, that shouldn't be tolerated. But you can see that if one side makes those choices and they start to dominate, they often face the wrath. They get the opposite of the result they intended. In fact, I would say almost 100% of the time, they get the opposite of what they intended, especially if you look at most dictators, most ruthless leaders, and people like Hitler and Mussolini, that humanity does rise up and says, no, we're not going to be dominated like that. And that's a power grab. But I'm talking about intolerance for your neighbor's political choices. I'm talking about intolerance for their choice as a mate, or their race, or their nationality, or what they do for a living. That my job is to manage me. And that's all of our jobs, is just to manage us. What other people choose, what their journey is none of our business. If they choose to spend their life drinking or on drugs and they're not stealing from us or bothering us, it's none of our business. It's their life journey. And while we can intend and pray for them and hope that send them divine order prevails in our thinking, we can wish them well and hope that one day they make the choice to recover. Their journey's none of our business. Now, if they're in our family, we certainly feel impacted. But again, it's not intolerance that's going to help them. And you have no business managing their life. They have to manage it. Now, you can say you're not going to live in my house, or if you don't pay rent, you're not going to live here. Those are all good things, and it has nothing to do with intolerance. It has to do with boundaries. So just remember that the acorn brain, the ego brain that is running you, if that's what's running you, you're not as happy as you could be if you would just be happy that there's so many differences and so many different paths for people to choose. That it's none of your business what people choose as a sexual preference. It's none of your business who people choose as partners. It's none of your business what they do for work. And of course, if you're intolerant of people's race or their religion or their sexual preferences, you're wasting your time and you're making yourself unhappy. And of course, you're probably telling a lot of others about how unhappy you are through the stories you tell about others. And it's such a waste of energy because the universe is recording the good you do. And so if you switched it to doing good and being tolerant, you would find that when you get to the other side, there'd be a record of it. So you're wasting your time because there's no record of, and you're not having an impact when you have an intolerant, small-minded thought process. And that's the thing to do, is to start to look at, where are you having small-minded thoughts? Where are you being judgmental? Where are you minding the business of others instead of just working on your own life? Your own life is the only life that you can control. And to see, that's about waking up and jumping into your life and realizing I can only work with me. And you'll have a life of joy and happiness. Plus, when you pass and you move from this to that, to the other side, when you're one with everything and nothing, you'll find that only the good you did was recorded and is recorded, and that you are making a difference when you do good. So if you have any questions, Steve at stevelentini.com, Steve at LENTINI.com. And if you'd like to be a guest, if you have a story that you'd like to tell me and tell others about being on the other side, maybe you had a near-death experience, or how you've experimented with rising above small-minded thinking and the difference it made in your life. Or if you want to come on and challenge me, either way, reach out to me, and I'm glad to talk about your small-minded thinking. Thanks.